Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Tonight I've got a couple of great encounters for you guys. They're from two of my subscribers. They are honestly chart toppers in my eyes. Before we get into these encounters, a couple of links I'd like to share with you. First, I'm a commercial-free channel, so I rely on my Patreon, PayPal, and merch link to help support this channel grow and go. Also, I have a second channel which is dedicated just to creepypastas, scary voice acting, and fan fiction. That link is in the description as well. If that's anything that you're into, follow that link, give a couple stories a listen, and you might just like them. And with that, guys, let's get on with the story, shall we? Our first subscriber Dogman encounter. I was listening to your Dogman, the Terror of the Woods story tonight, and the story about the Dogman at Hebgen Lake, or what we refer to as Quake Lake in Idaho, suddenly brought flashbacks to my mind. Hebgen Lake is not too far away from the place my family loved to go camping at when I was young, and I still love to go there to this day. Cliff and Wade Lakes in Montana, they're beautiful freshwater lakes that are in a hidden valley, and the water is a beautiful blue-green color. It's so wild and pristine there, and I absolutely love it. I could live there. Maybe now, I am not so sure. I remember being a young girl and walking on some game trails in the forest around the lake. My mom never liked me going on these walks by myself because there are grizzly bears and mountain lions there. I never worried about it, though. The forest was my home. It still is, anyway. I was walking along and I found some strange tracks. They looked like big dog tracks, and being young at the time, maybe 11 or 12, I never thought much about it. I thought maybe someone had their big dog up here and took him or her for a walk in the woods. Now that I think about it, they were abnormally large wolf-like tracks. I remember following these tracks, and they led me to a meadow. I stopped in the middle of the meadow because I felt like I was being watched. I got an overwhelming feeling of dread and wanted to run, but as I said in my previous story, I was taught never to run from a predator. I never thought about it being a dogman because I never heard of such a thing, and werewolves didn't exist, so I was thinking more along the lines of a bear or mountain lion, possibly. Well, when the hair started to rise on the back of my neck, I turned around and walked cautiously back towards camp. I remember the stillness of the forest, as if even the trees were holding their breath. I heard something behind me and to the left of me, walking at the time. It never struck me as odd, but now that I'm thinking of it, they were bipedal. I say they were because there was two of them. I got glimpses of them through the trees. They were tall, and one was brownish color, while the other one was black. I couldn't exactly tell you what I was looking at. I caught glimpses of a dog-like head, a tail, and that was about it. They were very fast, blurs mostly when I could catch a glimpse of them. I could tell you by the way they carried themselves that they were at ease in the forest. They never stumbled once over any fallen trees or bushes. They never made much noise either. I only noticed them following me because I have a very good sense of hearing, and at the time had exceptional sight. I honestly didn't think much about them. I just know that they were watching me, and I thought that maybe they were just curious like I was about them. They never growled at me, and I never stopped walking. And when I got out of the woods and started walking back on the road that went back towards our campsite, they stopped following me. Jeff, I went back there many times. They never once bothered me. They gave me the feeling that I shouldn't be there, but they never showed themselves fully to me and never tried to harm me in any way. I could have become a missing 411 had they decided I was a threat or maybe just something on their menu. I never would have realized this until I heard that story tonight. I grew up around these creatures and never even knew it. I have let my own daughter wander these paths. I am a little freaked out now and trying not to have a panic attack. I don't know what to think now. I love that area and I would go back, but now I don't know if I would allow my daughter or her husband to go walking off in the woods there again. It's going to take a while to process this because I'm literally sitting here and thinking about all the times I went walking through that forest by myself, and I know they were watching me. I never feared them really. I only had a very big respect for their boundaries and listened to my inner feelings and left when I knew I needed to. Wow, guys. What an intense story. Let's get on to story number 2, shall we? Hey, Jeff. Okay, so my cryptid story starts off last year. It was February 2017. It just snowed. About 10 inches or so had accumulated, and I live in Ohio, so it's really not a big deal to have a lot of snow on the ground. Where I live is in a development, and behind my house there's a large pond type of thing with a creek that runs through it, and across the pond there's a basketball and tennis court. The strip of land that the tennis court sits on is probably about 500 feet long or so. I'm not good at guessing distances, so bear with me. I woke up in the morning after the snowfall and saw these marks in the snow by the tennis court that had to be at least 10 to 15 feet apart from each other, like giant footprints spaced really far apart. I thought maybe they were from a squirrel or a deer bounding through, but I've always been a believer in the unknown and Bigfoot, Dogman, etc., so this piqued my interest. That day was way too cold and way too snowy to trudge across to go look and see what the prints actually were. So a couple days later, when it wasn't so bitterly cold, I walked over to investigate. They were definitely not a cluster of footprints that you would see from a squirrel or a single hoof print as you'd see from a deer. They were big footprints, so now I knew there was some sort of large animal or person with a huge gait or the ability to leap very far distances in deep snow. So that was kind of freaky. So I kept that in the back of my mind, but never saw anything else that would make me think there was any large cryptid in my little neighborhood. Until a couple months later, I think it was the end of May. It was around 12 at night, and I was outside smoking a cigarette. Now, this pond has a large drain pipe that leads under my street, under my backyard, to the pond for drainage. We have raccoons that use these drain pipes as an underground tunnel system, and we often hear them fighting, making all kinds of racket at night, and this night was no exception. The distance from the back porch to my house, where I was smoking, to the drain pipe in my backyard, I'd say is about 50 feet or so. And this night, the raccoons were really freaking out. They were screaming and fighting like crazy, and it was so loud and echoey from the opening of the drain pipe that the whole neighborhood, I'm sure, could hear it. So I stepped out from around the bush that blocked my view to see if I could see anything around the pipe, like why the raccoons were freaking out so bad. It was an overcast sky, but it was pretty well lit for being nighttime. When I stepped around the side of the bush, this massive creature stood up from the pond where the drain pipe was, and it had a raccoon in its hand. Now, I can see why the raccoons were freaking out. I could see the creature was dark in color and covered in fur. It had to be about 9 feet tall because I'm 5 10. Stand down by the pipe drain, my head and top of my shoulders can be seen from my house. I could see this thing's torso all the way down to the top of its hips. There was definitely no tail, and it had a human shape to it. Even though it was pretty light outside, it was still nighttime, so I couldn't get much detail other than a giant furry and dark. I was completely scared stiff. I don't think I noticed it because it never turned around to look at me, or maybe it did. It just didn't even care if I was there. But it had bigger problems on its hand because the raccoon it had grabbed was one that we called Bubba because he was so big and fat. Raccoons are not nice animals and have pretty sharp teeth and claws, and this thing was going crazy, biting and scratching and growling and snarling, trying to get out of this creature's grasp. But this creature didn't even care. It might as well have been holding a bouquet of flowers. Next thing I know, it lifted the raccoon up above its head and smacked it on the concrete barrier that surrounds the drain pipe. The raccoon stopped struggling immediately, probably because the creature turned its head into ground meat. Then the creature just strode off into the pond and down the creek into the darkness. I'm not sure what this creature was because it never turned its head, so I could see the shape of its face but couldn't tell if there were ears on the top of its head or if it had a cone-shaped head. So differentiating between Bigfoot or Dogman was pretty much impossible because it was dark and I was shitting my pants. This was over a year ago now, and I haven't seen anything since, but I get a little nervous whenever I hear the raccoons fighting. What did I tell you guys? Chart toppers, right there. Those were some amazing cryptid Dogman encounters. I don't know what number 2 was, but Jesus, I don't want to run into that son of a bitch ever. Number 1, wow. Growing up in the woods, walking in this area, getting watched as every time you go on these hiking trails. It reminds me of when I was younger. I used to go out in the woods. We had this old pond that was about a half a mile from my house. And every time I walked out there, I thought that something was watching me. I never thought Dogman or Sasquatch. I always thought person because, at a young age, you don't think that way. You're just told not to. So that kind of makes me wonder, did I have more encounters than I know? I had that one when I was 18 years old that, God, still strikes fear in my heart to this day. But anyway, I hope you guys loved these 2 encounters. I'm sorry for a little bit of mistakes I'd made. Like I said, I'm still in pain. Being surgery was Thursday, so no pain medication, just ibuprofen. I'm a beast. Just kidding, guys. Anyway, thanks for listening. I love all you guys. I have the best YouTube subscriber family in the world, and without you guys, this channel would be nothing. It would be me talking into my mic. That's it. With that, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.